Hello, beautiful women, and welcome back to Time to Thrive. In today's episode, for those of you girls that are watching, this is like a very makeshift episode. I'm currently in Melbourne with my family, and so my background's a little bit different. But for those of you girls that are listening, hello, hey, how are you? And I know that you don't really care what the hell that I am, because you girls are here today to unpack a really common situation that so many of you girls might be experiencing right now. This is something that I have wanted to unpack for some time, and it's coming off the back of a one-on-one coaching session that I literally just had with one of my private clients that I wanted to bring to the podcast because, like I said, so many of you girls will be struggling with this right now, and I want to give you a sense of clarity, a sense of certainty as to exactly what we want to focus on moving forward. And it essentially is going from not tracking our calories to learning how to better portion control and helping our mind flick over to focusing on more wholesome, day on a plate sort of mindsets, as opposed to constantly calorie tracking, macro tracking, focusing on numbers and all the rest of it. Now, if you girls know my story, you girls know that I initially, went into a weight loss phase, dropped 10 kilos, what felt like effortlessly. I simply started running. I then tracked my calories, had 1,200 calories, and literally within about 12, 15 weeks, I had lost about 8 kilos. And that was the first time that I had ever done that, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, people complain about weight loss. What is everyone talking about? And if you have gone down a weight loss journey before, I would say about 95% of women are like, it was so easy the first time. And girls, the reason behind this is essentially your limbic system. So as I call it in TTA, your toddler, the part of you that is more impulsive. Essentially, the first time that we go on a diet, your brain doesn't quite understand the restriction that we're putting it into because it doesn't really know that this is going to be a prolonged thing. It doesn't really understand that there may be a degree of this being not safe. It is kind of like watching. But what tends to happen is that then when we start to gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, your brain becomes very, very smart and begins to realize that, oh, she's doing this quite consistently. She goes into deep restriction and then she overeats. Then she goes into deep restriction and then she overeats, which is why so many of you girls right now will think, why have I lost my sense of discipline? Why can I not stick to keto or Atkins or low sugar or even some kind of calorie target the way that I used to? Why am I so food focused? Girls, this is the part of you that is your limbic system. It is connected to your nervous system. It is also essentially located at the nape of your neck. It's like this little apricot sized part of your brain. And it essentially is now very, very smart. It now knows that you are in some kind of binge restrict pattern or some kind of restriction pattern that feels unsafe for it. The first time that you did this diet, the first time that you went in the calorie deficit, this part of you didn't feel unsafe. It was very trusting because we had never done something like this before. But what's now happening, if you are noticing that you cannot stick to calorie counting, you cannot stick to your tracking, you cannot stick to macros, or you can for a short period of time, but then you feel very mentally restricted and all you want to do is blow out, this again shows us not only have we eroded our food relationship, but we've also essentially eroded the self-trust that we've built with ourselves, with our brain, and with our nervous system. So the reason that I share this today, girls, is because so many women want to start leaning further into intuitively eating, learning how to stop thinking about food so much, learning how to essentially be less numbers and calorie focused. And I want to give you some tangible tips and tricks as to how we can make that happen for you if you are someone that really just wants to begin to notice a shift in how she is making food decisions. But essentially, even going back to my story for a moment, when I had lost all that weight, the biggest fear that I had, so I had lost all this weight, and I went on a holiday with a girlfriend and I felt so lean and I looked so good. And I actually did look very good. I was very healthy. I had a little bit of a six pack, but I'd lost about 8 kilos. Background on this as well. I definitely did not need to lose weight whatsoever. I was never overweight. I was probably a little bit fluffy. I wouldn't even say that I was curvy. I just wasn't very sporty. I had never run. I hadn't gone to the gym. This was really the first time that I was like, maybe I could go for a kilometer run. Who knows? And honestly, I remember the first time that I did 2 kilometers and I messaged my brother and I was like, oh my goodness, I just ran 2 kilometers on the treadmill. And he was like, good job, Sherry. I'm a triathlon athlete. He didn't say that, but that was definitely his, he always celebrated my wins. But it was so funny, because that was such a big deal. But then I went on this holiday and essentially, because I got such a huge degree of validation, I also, I was like 16 at the time and I met my partner, my ex, and I met my partner at the time and I got this big sense of validation and this sense of, wow, I feel more attractive. I feel much sexier. I look better in a bikini. My clothes fit better. I have more energy. So there really was this positive reinforcement. However, because at the time, I was quite young, I also got a further degree of validation from this than probably what was necessary. Again, right, this is where so many young girls do go into diets and end up essentially losing too much weight or getting themselves stuck in a binge restrict cycle, because they take such a huge degree of validation from the weight loss and the validation that other people are giving them that it creates almost like a new identity. And that's exactly what happened for me. So I really attached to that girl that had lost the weight easily, that was very lean, that was now running 10 kilometers a day at the gym, that I was like the fit one. And I really took a sense of like, this is now who I am. And so what then happened was I lost even further weight, right? So I essentially, from my initial weight before that holiday and before my initial first diet and, 1,200 calorie diet and 10 kilometers a day running, I essentially lost 20 kilos. And that was probably in about 6 to 8 months, right? And it's simply because it felt so easy the first time around. I simply got into this lifestyle change and my hunger wasn't really there and I felt really disciplined. Again, this was the first time that I'd done this. So essentially, right, I became anorexic and I was absolutely underweight. But at the end of the day, that felt very safe for me, right? So I got to a point where I was very unhealthy looking. I was almost, right, even my size 6 jeans ended up being too big for me. And absolutely, I looked incredibly unhealthy. I was incredibly food focused. I could not focus on anything else, not my schooling, not my relationships. I was grouchy. I had no sex drive. There was, there was so many things in my life, right, that essentially were beginning to be eroded. But I found so much safety in doing this and having this routine because I had gotten this huge degree of validation. It also gave me a huge degree, if I think back, it gave me a huge degree of attention as well, right? A lot of people would always comment on how disciplined I was. I got a lot of attention from my family, right? So there was a lot around that. However, and this is really what I want to focus on in today's podcast episode, is I had to begin to realize that this degree of being unhealthy, this degree of being so unhealthy was eroding every facet of my life. Not only my energy, like I said, but it was eroding my relationships and all the rest of it. But I had to begin to realize, and this moment absolutely did drop in for me at a certain point, was realizing that I had to gain some weight. I had to gain some weight because if I was not careful, I was not going to be healthy anymore. And I really, eventually, right, I really just sat in the recognition of that. But what had to happen was I had to sit with the fear of gaining weight. And right, I had this fear that I was going to gain weight and it was going to be a negative thing because I was going to gain so much weight. But I had to begin to realize that, okay, I have this fear of gaining weight, but gaining 5 kilos does not mean gaining 30, right? I had to begin to create safety around that. So that's exactly what I started to do. I started realizing that there was a version of myself, and this is really what I want to highlight to anyone right now, that is still in the sense of restriction. They might be needing to gain some weight. They might be needing to go back to intuitively eating and healing their relationship with food. I had to begin to recognize that, okay, by gaining 5 kilos, this is actually more disciplined of me. Me simply restricting my calories to 1,200, running 10 kilometers a day, never having, a chocolate with my family, never having a hot chocolate, never having some bread with my eggs on toast in the morning. This is not discipline, right? This is me being stuck in such a state of fear that I don't give myself any permission for joy or proper fuel or nutrients. I can't go out for breakfast with my girlfriends. That's not discipline. That's me essentially. I almost created this thing of like that's me being silly. Like that's literally me missing out on my life. And I don't choose that for myself. So realizing that there was more discipline to be had in going, I'm actually going to do something different. I'm going to do something that feels scary. That's disciplined, right? Discipline is me being so dedicated and devoted to loving myself so well that I want the best outcome for myself, and realizing that the best outcome was learning how to eat a little bit more, how to be able to go out for breakfast and not track that meticulously, being able to go out for a Thai dinner and not track that meticulously, and realizing that, okay, my goal now is to gain a little bit of weight so I actually can have some more food, and I actually need to deliberately be doing that. And so therefore, so before I sort of go into sort of really tangible tips, girls, I'm just going to sort of further explain this part of the story out. What essentially, because so many of you girls will know that I ended up gaining 30 kilos in 9 months because I didn't do this part right. I didn't have the right support around this. So what ended up happening is that I ended up, yes, increasing my weight, and it actually was really great. I then also started going to the gym instead of just running. I also did strength sessions, which meant though that I started to really notice a physique change, and people started really saying, you look so much better. And absolutely, they were right. I started, instead of having 1,200 calories, I started having 1,800 calories, and I would still, right, again, I was still unfortunately sticking to certain food rules. So I didn't have whole eggs. I would have egg whites. I would always have, the low calorie bread instead of, so it was very volume eating, but I was having 1,800 calories, and I did notice over the next, let's say 3 months, I did gain a little bit more weight back, but realizing, wow, I actually feel so much better. I look so much better. And that's really where I started to realize that, okay, I don't have to track this dinner as much, because I know this dinner dinner is 500 calories, and therefore I know that it looks the same every single time I make it. So therefore, can I begin to practice not plugging this meal into my MyFitnessPal and simply trusting that I know what 2 slices of toast and some eggs and some avocado and some spinach and some tomatoes, I know what that looks like on my plate to make up this meal that I know is 500 calories. So therefore, the next stage was then realizing that, okay, I don't have to plug this into an app. I can simply begin to gauge it, and can I begin to build up my self-trust around this? Girls, this is where a lot of people, just to chat to the self-trust concept, a lot of us will think, well, I can't do that because I don't trust myself. But girls, confidence comes from competence, right? Let me say that again. Confidence comes from competence, meaning that you cannot be confident in something if you have no references for you having done it properly before. So it is normal for us to try something new and be a little bit fearful, but that's where we have to remember that I will literally never feel completely confident in me doing this or in this choice right now until I do it and I realize that I can do it, and then I actually will have confidence because I've shown myself that I can be competent in this thing. But then what tends to happen is that we have such a huge degree of perfectionist mindset. So I'm calling anyone out right now if you are someone that also notices for yourself. If we have this perfectionist mindset, you tend to think that, well, if I get it wrong, or if I fail, right, again, using these words, or if I even have a wobble and I don't get it perfectly, therefore, I will regret having even tried, or it's easier and safer just to simply do the things the way that I have done. What we need to begin to shift is going, okay, well, even if I don't get it perfect, I will still be closer to the result that I'm wanting because I will therefore understand what I can do differently next time. And once we actually get okay with actually stepping forward, right, using this terminology of failing forward, can I realize that I'm going to be so much closer to the goal and the outcome that it is that I'm wanting? So it was really therefore choosing to go, okay, if I do end up having additional calories here, or I end up having a wobble, it's not the end of the world. Again, reminding you girls, again, anyone right now that needs to gain a little bit of weight, really recognizing that at the end of the day, it's really not a big deal. And I know that it feels like it is. I know that you fear having more food and then blowing out, having a binge and then having a wobble. But it's realizing, girls, that in order to gain a kilo of body fat, and this is the same for everyone, in order to gain a kilo of body fat, you have to have 7,000 additional calories above your maintenance. That is a factual thing. Therefore, right, really recognizing this, therefore, what do we know? We know that if we're not completely blowing out, even if we were to have a little bit more, you're not going to just magically gain a kilo of body fat. You're not going to drastically look any different. Also, girls, like 1 kilo of body fat, even if we were to gain that, can we appreciate that, like, let's say if like your sister or your best girlfriend, you wouldn't be able to notice if she gained a kilo of body fat. It actually doesn't change the way that we look whatsoever. So really, like, if we take all of this pressure off, realizing that even if I do gain a little bit of weight, right, again, there'll be some of you girls right now listening to this that do need to gain a bit of weight. There'll be some of you girls that simply want to go into intuitively eating and not gain any weight. But it's really realizing that even if I did, it's not the end of the world, because right, even if I did have a binge, even if I did blow out once or twice or even 5 times, I'm not going to drastically look different. And it's now trusting myself that as these moments potentially may happen, can I make that okay? Because I would be working through that, meaning that I'm going to be progressing towards having a more balanced relationship with food, which means that they're not really going to happen very, very often, or for a long period of time whatsoever, because I'm going to be working through them so that they don't happen. Again, we want to be confident that like a binge is never going to happen or no weight gain is ever going to happen, right? Which for some of you girls, it won't. But realizing that like, okay, but even if it did, like, it's really not that bad, because I would be becoming more competent in not binging, in not blowing out, in not counting my calories and feeling so food focused. So as I increase my competence, of course, my confidence is going to increase and it's going to feel more natural. It's going to feel much easier over time, right? So in saying that, girls, this is where I ended up gaining weight and feeling much better in my skin. However, this is where my binges started, because I still had so many food rules that I still felt so guilty every time, let's say, I would have a Magnum. I was trying to be healthy, but I would still have a Magnum and I'd feel so guilty. And I'd tell myself, shit, I've now had 2,000 calories. I've now gone overboard. I'm going to gain weight. And then I would literally have all 6. And then I would also have a couple of blocks of Lindt chocolate. And then I would also have 3 slices of toast. And I really went down this all or nothing mindset where I was like, oh my goodness, now I've gained too much weight. Now I'm going to restrict. And then I would literally go back to 1,200 calories. And so unfortunately, I got caught in that exact binge restrict cycle. And I didn't have someone in my corner at the time to really support me in not flicking into all or nothing and actually having practical strategies and practical tips and a practical step-by-step and support at the time to make sure that I stopped these blowout moments, right? Essentially, I unfortunately literally end up just restricting and then binging even harder, restricting even harder, binging even harder, right? And that is literally what made me gain the 20 kilos additionally on top of what I'd already gained, which meant that I gained 30 kilos in 9 months for those of you girls that are new here, right? So this is literally what I support girls in not doing, because I didn't have the support, and therefore it took me a long time to go back to intuitively eating, getting back to being comfortable with eating less food, right? less food off the back of binges, but essentially it was more food than any of my restriction days, which then, right, as you average it out across the week, I was having much less food. So instead of having, 4 days of way in a 5,000 calorie surplus, I was simply having more of the 2,000 calories. And of course, right, that was a deficit versus the crazy binges that I was having. So of course, I naturally began to lose weight, but it wasn't a weight loss journey. Of course, I wanted to lose weight. Of course, I wanted to go back to simply being a size 8 or a size 10. I just wanted to feel like myself again, have my clothes fit me, not my size 6 clothes because that was insane, right? But it was proper clothes that fit me, being able to actually, go to Elite 11 or go to Lululemon and put on a pair of tights and be like, wow, these actually look good and I feel these out and I have a booty. And I felt so fantastic actually be able to go to the gym, run 5Ks and be like, I have so much energy. That feels incredible. Go home, have a shower, put some jeans on. Like, that's really the lifestyle that I wanted to get back to. But that only happened when I healed my relationship with food. So girls, now that I've given you that backstory, this episode today, as you can imagine, is really for anyone right now that you are wanting to create more safety in intuitively eating. You want to, and this is really where we're going to be addressing the fears that come up with this, as so many of you girls will probably already be listening to this and thinking like, oh, but I'm scared, as I mentioned, right, of gaining weight. I'm scared that I'm going to blow out. I'm scared of the not knowing and needing to control meticulously the numbers and being okay with kind of gauging. I'm going to be chatting us through that so we can create more safety around this next stage for you. The little caveat and the asterisk that I do want to pop on here, girls, is recognizing that there is going to be a degree of personalization and individualization that would come from further support from this. Because right now, if you are someone that's like, I'm not restricting, but really you're still on 1,200 calories or you're having 500 calories on some days and you're wanting to intuitively eat, my love, you, and I'm speaking to the woman right now that you're like, oh my God, that's so me. I just want to call you out lovingly and in a very nurturing way that you need to be eating properly. If you are noticing that you are restricting and you are binging and you are essentially not fueling yourself correctly, you are literally battling your body. And right at the end of the day, most of you girls that this is resonating for right now, you will be having so many calories throughout the week because you are binging so hard. And if you were to average that out across the week, you probably would be sitting at about 1,800, 1,900, maybe even 1,500, but you would be having more food on a daily basis. But I know that because of you thinking that maybe I need to lose weight or I need to lose the binging weight or I need to feel better right now, you have this inclination to consistently restrict your calories. But I really just want to call you out and remind you that you doing that right now is literally maybe the reason that you are binging so hard, is because you're putting yourself in such a deep deficit. You are getting yourself so hungry. Your nervous system is so triggered, your limbic system. So as I mentioned, your toddler, the part of you that is more impulsive, the part of you that gets fearful when you have too little food, that part of you is very reactive right now. It's very on red hot alert, meaning that the moment that you start restricting or having a low calorie day, all that ends up happening is you end up feeling so food focused or so craving food later in the evening that all you want to do is therefore blow out. So you're actually having more calories across your week, meaning you're either gaining weight or you're unable to actually lose your weight. So I just really want to call you out, my love, whoever's listening to this right now, who is thinking, I know that I should be eating more. I want you to listen to that part of you, right? I really want you to hear that voice within you. If you know that you're like, I probably do need to be eating more, I'm simply scared. I just want you to hear my voice. Or if you're watching this right now, I just want you to see my face and I want you to know that it's okay that you have that fear, right? That fear is not going anywhere right now. But girls, just because you have that fear does not mean that that thought of feeling that fear, right, or whatever that internal dialogue is, that is not a good enough excuse to not do what is required for your health and to do what is required for you to actually live this one life that you have been given. Okay. I also want to bring in God and religion in here for a moment. And I want you and again, take from this what you will, girls. I will never push my beliefs on you, but I do want you to hear me when I say this, girls. I know I've said this in past podcast episodes. You have been gifted this life. You have been gifted this sack of skin and bones, right? As you girls watch me right now, as you listen to my voice, wherever it is that you're watching this, I just want you to remember that, right, what you see, right, is, yep, Sherry, but also I am a soul and I'm an energy inside a body. And obviously my physical form is my sack of skin and bones. This is just the way that I look. But within me, right, there is my spirit, there's my soul, there's my energy, whatever, right? And if you think about making eye contact with someone and really staring someone in the eye, right, it's like you can see this energy behind them. And obviously they take this physical form and they look the way that they look. But the reason that I share that, girls, is because I truly believe it is your responsibility to take care of your sack of skin and bones. And if you are under eating, if you're undernourishing, God has literally given you, again, if you're not, a God-centric person, if you are simply spiritual, if you are simply just someone that just wants to respect your body, wherever it is that you land, I just really want to be that voice in your ear that reminds you that it is your duty to take care of this home. And when you don't do that correctly, that is essentially something that you will have to live with until the day that you die. And we can simply choose to go, you know what, maybe maybe this is a challenge for me. Maybe I do know that I need to be eating more, but can I put my thoughts and my feelings aside and come back to almost anchoring into a degree of moral code to go, I need to treat myself better. And it's not because I want to, maybe. I need to treat my body better because my body requires a certain amount of calories, units of energy. It deserves a degree of energy and nourishment. And when I don't do that, my skin doesn't look good, my hair doesn't look good, my energy doesn't look good, my sex drive isn't good, my entire being and my entire life is not actually the epitome or the flux that it could be. And I want better for you, and I know that you want better for you too. So sometimes, girls, we need to learn, and a big part of learning how to heal our relationship with food is, yes, dealing with our emotions and our mindset, but it's also equally learning how to put that shit aside sometimes and realize that we also have a duty to eat in a way that, essentially when we think about intuitively eating principles, it's actually having a degree of gentle nutrition and still having a degree of I still need to have proper carbs and proper protein. My body literally is optimized off the back of that. My body is built for these macronutrients. I still need to be having a certain degree of sugar in my diet. It's coming back to going, I still need to be in service to this body, this sack of skin and bones that I have been given, that actually does perform optimally when I do take care of it. So off the back of that, girls, I'm going to pull up some notes here that I made in my client session and prior to it as well, because there's a couple of really key things that I want us to chat through. Essentially, like I said, for anyone right now that is under eating, reminding yourself as you go into intuitively eating, there is going to be a slightly varied process on this to make sure that you actually are having enough fuel. But I'm really talking to the girl right now. And again, right, it'll still apply for you if you are currently under eating. But if we're thinking about it from the lens of like an 1,800, 2,000 calorie diet, right? Pretty average for a female that is wanting to feel lean, wanting to feel good in her skin. I'm just going to use that as the average today. So right now, if you're noticing that you are constantly plugging into MyFitnessPal, you are literally tracking everything. A big part of why we tend to desire to do this is because it gives you the sense of control. This is why a lot of the time when other areas of your life are feeling out of control or you feel stressed, you might begin to notice yourself having this inclination to double down on counting your calories. You might have this desire to lose weight. Why? Because it gives you a sense of control. It gives you something to focus on. It could be even almost a degree of procrastination over therefore not having to invest your energy or your thoughts or your mental capacity in other areas of your life that might be needing attention. So again, just beginning to notice, and I want you to really self-reflect firstly here, is really to go, why do I notice myself wanting to track calories so meticulously, right? Some of you girls will even begin to think, okay, well, maybe it's because I don't trust myself to be able to know the numbers perfectly if I was not to gauge, if I was not to track. So really, I want you to ask yourself, what do I gain from tracking, right? What do I actually gain? Is it a sense of control? Is it giving me this sense of more discipline? Is it giving me the sense of something to do in my day that actually makes me feel like I've accomplished something? Like really, what is it that I'm gaining from this? Again, I'm speaking to the woman right now that is wanting to begin to intuitively eat a little bit more. And again, right, it not only could be simply because you want to begin to eat in a more peaceful way, but it also could be because, as we mentioned prior, that you're noticing that every single time you count your calories, you feel so mentally restricted and you end up eating way more than even what you were hungry for in the first place. So counting calories is not actually helping you lose weight. It's actually making you feel so mentally restricted and making you feel like you need to stick to a plan that you literally end up gaining weight from calorie tracking. That's like one of the most crazy, it's almost like the dichotomy of tracking calories, is that so many people get caught down this mental restriction when you don't have a great relationship with food. Backstory, girls, I sometimes go through moments of tracking now, but that's because I healed my relationship with food, so it no longer feels mentally restrictive. It simply is like a tool, and that's exactly what MyFitnessPal is supposed to be. But I end up tracking and then I just go straight back into gauging after a couple of days because now I know the portions that I need to be aiming for, and I don't like the concept of tracking my calories so meticulously because I don't enjoy feeling so food focused. I don't enjoy it being such a part of my day. Again, each to their own. But if you are noticing right now that you are tracking your calories and you're like, but I need to do this to lose weight, but you are literally gaining weight or you're not losing any weight because you're still going over your targets, that is a clear sign that tracking calories for me right now is actually getting in the way and sabotaging my weight loss goals because my headspace is not in the right headspace that it needs to be in order for this to actually be conducive to my goals and to my weight loss goals. So we want to appreciate, what am I gaining from this, right? And if some of you girls will be like, it is weight loss. Some of you girls, most of you girls listening to this will be like, okay, well, I'm gaining a sense of control. It makes me feel like I'm on track. But then therefore, that's where point number 2 goes, is I want you to really pulse check that. Is this actually true? For a lot of you girls, it gives me a sense of control. It helps me know my numbers. It helps me lose weight. But when we do get to this step number 2, is this actually true? For most of you girls right now who are listening to this, you're probably still overeating and still binging regardless. And that's because you feel, as I said, mentally restricted, and you therefore feel the desire to still go overboard because you simply want permission to have more if you like to. What this shows us is that you're so in your head that you're actually tapped out of your body. right? You are tapped out of you actually eating 1800, 2000 calories and feeling fine on a physical level. You simply want permission to eat more because you feel like you've now hit this glass ceiling and you want permission to eat more. And so therefore you end up doing that, right? Oftentimes, and this is why so many of my girls lose weight as part of TTA, is because now that we know from a I'm going to chat to a GFS in a moment, which is a gentle food structure, which is what I use inside Thrive. But what we want to appreciate is that when we begin to better gauge our calories and we don't know the exact amount, but we know roughly what we're on, it helps us be able to go, okay, well, now I actually have to rely a little bit more on my physical cues and being able to go, I'm actually not that hungry. Like I might have the desire for more food, but my body is actually telling me that the amount of calories and nutrients that I've given it, it's actually fine. Therefore, I don't actually have the desire to eat more. I don't even have a hunger cue to eat more. What this ends up meaning, right? If we had had the exact same day or the same moment and we tracked our calories, what ends up happening is we could be on 1800 calories, let's say, but because we've hit our limit, now we're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I cannot have any more food, which, right, if you guys know the psychological phenomenon around this, we literally end up simply wanting the permission to be able to have more and have the option to have more. But when we feel like, okay, I've maxed out on my calories, I cannot have any more food, all that does to your limbic system is make you, right, almost like turns on this little rebel switch in our mind. All we want to do is be able to have more. And we now fear getting hungry, even though right now you may not be, right? So this is why when we go to more of an intuitively eating approach and we simply focus on gauging our portions, you'll be able to have dinner and be like, okay, I'm roughly on 1800, let's say, maybe it's 1900, maybe it's 1600, right? Roughly gauging, okay, but how am I actually feeling? More often than not, and this is literally what happens inside TTA, girls are like, I actually feel fine, right? And I think I'm on roughly 1750. Amazing. But you'll be able to actually tap into your physical cue. Why? Because you are no longer allowing yourself to rely completely on the numbers. You now do have to, and this is where our confidence increases because we become more competent in this. And anyone who's listening to this right now thinking, oh, but I don't have hunger, I don't have fullness cues. I literally never feel full. That's because you are tapped out of your fullness cues. You are so used to binging and overeating so much that even a regular level of fullness doesn't feel like enough. It probably feels like a big emotional void even within you as well, because food feels like an emotional crutch. So you literally feel like, well, I can never get full. And that's because you're trying to get yourself to feel something with food that you actually cannot feel, a degree of dopamine, a degree of safety, that no matter how much food you have emotionally, you cannot help yourself feel that. So again, if that's landing for you, this is what Thrive is all about, is learning how to actually meet your mental, emotional, and physical needs so that you actually can feel calm, peaceful, and in control. That is what a healed relationship with food is. But we need to begin to appreciate that when we go more on the intuitive eating lens and to start taking more of this approach with our food, you'll begin to realize there are so many moments where you actually go, you know what, I may be on 1800 calories, maybe I'm on 2000 calories today. Again, whatever it is that you're aiming for, which again is very dictated with Inside Thrive depending on your goals. But being able to really go, okay, I'm aiming for 1800 right now. For some of you girls, doing that bit of cardio, bit of gym is actually a deficit, so that will be enough. And being able to go, okay, roughly I'm on that, but now if I was even over or above or right bang on, how am I actually feeling? Am I actually hungry? Do I even have a desire for more food? More often than not, when you actually heal your relationship with food and you do the work, you'll end up realizing that I'm actually not hungry, right? So meaning that I know that I could have more, and this is a big part of what the work that we do on Inside Thrive as well, is we work on permission. So going, I can have more. There is more food right now. I have not hit any glass ceiling. However, how am I actually feeling in my body? My body feels fine. I have enough energy. I feel pretty good. Fan-frickin-tastic, right? And this is where we can start creating safety, right, in intuitively eating, right? So many people end up thinking that intuitively eating is eating whatever I want, whenever I have an impulse. Girls, that is not intuitively eating. Intuitively eating is being able to recognize that we still have gentle nutrition principles, meaning that we're still having portions that are good and in accordance to your goals, that are in accordance to the healthiest and most thriving version of yourself, which, for the record, is not a version of you that is overweight and overeating and eating anything that she wants no matter what. It's this version of you that is eating an amount that feels really good for her, that is in accordance to her goals, where she still feels lean and fit. But instead of counting the calories meticulously, you're able to gauge your portions so you feel more mental clarity, less food noise, and more internal peace. Right, where we also feel less emotional about our food decisions, and we actually also feel emotionally regulated in other areas of our life. So off the back of that, girls, I really want you to now ask yourself the question in terms of, what is my fear, therefore, about intuitively eating? Is it that I still hold this fear that I'm going to gain weight? Is it that I still hold this fear that if I don't know, I'm essentially doing something wrong? And this is really what I shared with this client in our one-on-one call, and what we unpacked together with her, was realizing that we had a lot of fears, but as we unpacked them, we realized that they actually didn't have to be fears anymore, right? We actually can begin to create safety around the joys of intuitively eating and gauging our calories better. So to actually give you some tangible and tactical tips moving forward, girls, anyone right now that is wanting to begin to intuitively eat, what I want to firstly chat you through, point number one, is I'd love you to adopt a GSF mental framework. Now, what that stands for is gentle food structure, as I mentioned before. This is something we actually personalize inside Thrive. And what that looks like is essentially choosing to have breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, dessert. It is actually simply coming back to having a little bit of structure throughout your day. And it's choosing to begin to aim for a 2,000 calorie diet. Then, and for anyone that's like, but I can't have that because I want to lose weight and I've got to be on 1,800, that's okay. But it's simply choosing to begin to aim for that. And then we tack on 80% fullness, meaning that as you actually begin to eat these portions that we've actually gauged out for you. So let's say, for instance, right, step one, going GFS, breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, dessert. Right, therefore, I know I'm aiming for 2,000, which means that my main meals are going to end up being between 400 and 500. Again, depending on how you want to weight it. If you're someone like me that prefers a bigger dinner, 600 calories for dinner, then having a look at what that leaves you for a snack and then also dessert. So we're filling in these slots with essentially calorie weighting, right? But we're evening it out throughout the day. There is no back weighting. There's no having huge dinners. We're still waking up and having breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, dessert. Then as you do this, and we're aiming for that 2,000, that is where we begin to gauge for your 80% fullness, which is step number 2. So it's choosing to now go, as I'm eating, can I begin to notice, and right, this is the challenge, can I begin to notice when my physical body starts becoming full and when my desire for completing this meal begins to drop? This is where a lot of people begin to think, but that would never happen, because if I can eat the whole thing, I will eat the whole thing. What you girls will begin to realize is as you actually begin to do the mindset work around this, you also begin to emotionally regulate better in other ways and learn how to self-soothe without food. You'll realize the desire to have so much food actually drops. You'll realize that you end up feeling fuller and actually fuller quicker. And you'll end up realizing that there are many moments when you feel like, oh, I actually have 600 calories of pasta, chicken, pesto in front of me, and I'm actually getting towards the end and I really actually don't want any more. And you'll realize that the ability for you to leave food on your plate becomes much more simple, much easier for you to do. And this is the benefit, girls, of learning how to better gauge your calories and intuitively eat, is you end up realizing there are many moments where by calorie tracking, you're eating because you can. You're eating because you have calories to spare. You're having dessert because you feel like, oh, but I saved 300 calories for half of this Halo top or the whole Halo top. But you'll end up realizing that there are many moments as you begin to intuitively eat where you realize that, oh, I was simply doing that because I felt like I could, or I had to, or I had the calories to use. But what that does is that means that you've been completely tapped out of what your body is actually asking for, right? There are many moments right now where you're probably eating, where you're like, I could, essentially, right, what we're saying is you essentially could be saving calories if you were intuitively eating. But right now, we're trying to save calories so much by calorie tracking, but it's only making you feel mentally restricted. Okay, so it's choosing to now better adopt more of a GFS framework and choosing to better gauge your portions and learning how to tune out of the numbers as much. Now, point number 2 with this, girls, and really, again, tangible tips, is really making sure that you address that fear, right? I really want you to address the fear of doing this, because if you do not address the fear, if you don't stare it in the face and you actually revamp that, again, thinking that, well, if I don't know my calories, I'm going to gain weight, I'm going to get fat, and then I'm going to look different, everyone's going to judge me, realizing that if that is like literally our fear that we attach to, can we see that it makes complete sense why that big part of you is scared to intuitively eat? But then this, girls, as you recognize that fear, you have to choose to see that in the face and really go, is that true? Or am I simply making a story that is literally going to keep me stuck in a state of fear, and then I'm just going to be calorie tracking for the rest of my life and never intuitively eat? So realizing that, okay, but right, if I'm intuitively eating and I'm having even a little bit more food, right, but it actually means that I'm not binging, that means I'm actually having less calories, so I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to be feeling better in my skin, less food noise, which also means that I'm going to be thinking about food way less, which means that I'm going to feel less hungry. Okay, so is there actually a huge benefit in me choosing to actually take this slightly different approach? Is there a benefit in me not calorie tracking as much and not knowing the exact amount of numbers? Because reality is, knowing the exact amount of numbers right now is actually shooting myself in the foot. It's making me binge. It's making me feel restricted. It's not actually making me enjoy this health and fitness lifestyle that I've signed up for. So it's realizing, right, that we start staring that fear in the face and really learning that a big part of our fear is simply a story that we're telling ourselves, and realizing that I actually can revamp this in a really beautiful way and actually come back to a degree of honesty and truth and go, oh, if I actually frame this in a different way, it's actually going to support me and be more conducive to me feeling more in control and feeling better in my skin. Yeah. So off the back of that, girls, point number 3 that I really want to support you with in sort of wrapping up today's episode is I want you to start realizing that you need to control your thoughts. And that's kind of similar to point number 2, but realizing that it is okay that there's a big part of you that simply wants to know all the calories, know the numbers, and go back to tracking, right? That is going to be a very common thing for the first couple of weeks, maybe even the first couple of months of you learning how to better intuitively eat, right? Learning how to go out for dinners and go, you know what, I don't know the amount of calories in these 2 or 3 slices of pizza. I don't know that. But can I gauge this for a moment, look at the bread, look at the toppings, and go, you know what, let's say hypothetically these 3 slices were at 700 calories. Okay, what does that look like as part of my GFS? Okay, great. My mind might begin to freak out about that. It's choosing to now have the mental discipline and give this the attention it deserves to go, I am not going to fear this. I'm going to say yes to life. I'm going to make the best choice that I possibly can. I'm going to gauge this, and then I'm going to move the thoughts out of my mind and focus back on this present moment and simply be intentional. Can we see, right, girls, your thoughts are not just simply thoughts that you have to have. You naturally will have an inclination to think in the same way that you always have in the past. What we have to do to actually increase our degree of mental discipline is really beginning now to look at our thoughts and go, is this true? Is this helpful? And how would I prefer to think about the situation? What is actually going to support me, right? In this moment right now, realizing that me knowing the exact amount of calories, fearing weight gain, that simply keeps me stuck. It keeps me emotionally tied to MyFitnessPal. So therefore, when I gauge my calories, I am therefore going to put together a plate. I'm then going to move the thoughts aside, and I'm going to remind myself that I'm allowed to eat this. No weight gain is going to happen from this. It's going to help me feel full and satisfied and good. My body knows exactly what to do with it, and then I'm going to move the fuck on. When we take more of that approach, we are naturally going to feel more calm and more peaceful. And then, right, can we see again, it's mental discipline. As you then finish the meal, oh my goodness, now I'm freaking out. What if I've gained weight? Maybe I'll blow out. See those thoughts. Come back and be intentional with your thoughts. I don't need to do that. I don't need to blow out right now because my body is full. I am satisfied. I'm going to have a piece of chocolate and I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to be so proud of myself. Girls, the way that you speak to yourself is literally teaching your nervous system how to feel, right? We can literally spiral ourselves into anxiety. We can literally spiral ourselves into panic attacks. We can spiral ourselves into the darkest of headspaces. And I definitely know what that feels like. But what we have to begin to do is really have the mental discipline to come back to positive frames of mind and more stable frames of mind that genuinely support us in taking the actionable steps that we need to. So off the back of today's episode, girls, I want to remind you that right now, if you're learning how to intuitively eat, and you really want more of a step-by-step, you really want to be able to better understand how to make this a reality for you so that you can actually be that girl that goes out for brunch, that has a soy cap, that then comes home, has some Weet-Bix for lunch, has dinner, and she's able to intuitively eat. She can gauge her calories so that she still knows that she's on track with her goals, but she's not so food focused. If you are someone right now that genuinely wants to create this reality for yourself, I want you to know that this is possible for you. You do not have to stay stuck. You do not have to be binging, restricting. You do not have to be fearing calories. You do not have to be down this rabbit hole so deep the way that you maybe have been, the way that I also was myself. So what I want to invite you to do, my loves, and simply go to the show notes in today's podcast episode, whether you are on YouTube watching this or whether you are on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, I want you to know I have now created a ultimate binge eaters reset. Girls, right now, if you are constantly resetting and you are constantly trying, even if it's trying to intuitively eat better, if you're constantly resetting and counting your calories and going back into MyFitnessPal, and you can consistently notice that you just keep binging, you keep overeating, you keep going round and round and round in circles, and you notice, girls, and I really want to call you out, my love, if you are someone that has been doing this, honestly, not even weeks or months, but for years, and you're binging always comes back. Girls, I have created a 90-minute ultimate binge eaters reset. This is your mini course step by step with me every single step of the way. There is 26 modules that literally take you through from start to finish how to heal your relationship with food in 90 minutes. It is the ultimate reset. I have put so much effort and work into this. It is essentially everything that I teach inside Thrive in a condensed mini course for you, so that literally off the back of today's podcast episode, if you are genuinely ready to break out of your binge restrict cycle and you want someone in your corner to step you through literally how to do that physically, mentally, and emotionally. So I literally do my 3-pillar approach, the Thrive method. We focus on resetting your humans, so your nutrition, your exercise, your environment, your nervous system. We then focus on resetting your mindset, so your internal dialogue, letting go of food rules, really setting up mentally so that this is actually a strong, mentally resilient reset so that we don't go back into binging or thought habits or anything like that. And then we do an emotional reset to actually unpack our shame, our guilt, our regret, put them aside, and actually step forward from an empowered and intentional place to get you feeling incredibly grounded. Girls, this is the ultimate reset. It is also the reason, and it will be literally the reason why you have not been able to break free from this before, is because every time you reset, you pull out MyFitnessPal, you plug your numbers in, and you hope to God that the next time you simply have more #willpower or discipline. My loves, you are not binging because of a lack of willpower or discipline. You are binging because there are other reasons as to why you are leaning on food. We need to reset properly in each key of these 3 areas. And again, this is why my girls get the results they do. So if you're an independent girly, maybe you don't need a 12-week course. Maybe you just feel like that's not where you're at right now. But what you need is a proper reset for you today, right now, as you listen to this. And I hope this is landing for you at a time where you're like, even if you're someone that's not even having an urge right now, if you're someone right now that you're like, I just don't want another urge to come. I want to reset properly before another binge even happens, before I gain any more weight. I'm going to invite you to go to the show notes from this podcast episode and click the Ultimate Binge Eaters Reset. My loves, this is something that I have put so much work into, and it's to make sure, it is honestly my gift to you, so to make sure that you do not have to stay stuck like you have been before. So my loves, off the back of that, I love you, I believe in you, I back you. And if you are someone that does want an in-depth coaching program, if you are someone that is actually ready to draw that line in the sand and make sure this time is the very last time that you ever have to be binging, restricting, fearing weight gain like you are currently, and you just want to have an incredible relationship with food, you want to have an incredible relationship with your body, I want you to remember that you are not alone. And there is a community of such incredible women led by myself to make sure that you do not have to be alone in this, that you get a step-by-step blueprint method to actually break out of your binge restrict cycle for good. I'll also leave the call link below for you to book in for a free 30-minute binge breakthrough call with me. This is a 30-minute call where you and I jump online together and unpack your current situation and get really clear as to exactly why you've stayed stuck until now, and get really clear on your personal next steps to make sure that you can get binge free in the next 30 days, start losing weight and feeling incredible in your skin. So I'll also leave the call link for that below if you're a woman right now that is ready to make that change. Also, just a reminder, if you're listening to this in real time as well, I do currently have a promotion that's running that as you sign up in the month of November, you get the entire month of December free as part of the program as well. So it turns it into a 16-week program, and you get 4 weeks free with me and all the other TTA girls. So girls, I'll leave that link below. I love you, I believe in you, I back you, and I will see you in next week's episode. Bye-bye.